Have you ever thought about why some people light up a room without saying a lot, but others, despite being smart or well-dressed, even rich, just don't leave the same impact? It's clearly not about their looks or their grooming or even the money that they have. It's about their presence, the charisma that they bring to the table. And presence is something that is built or broken by the little things that you do every day. The way you speak, the way you carry yourself, or the way that you show up online. That is why in this video, I'm breaking down 10 personality mistakes that might be sabotaging your presence. Some of these are going to sting a little bit, but well, that's the point. Because once you understand what is harming your charisma, what is preventing you from being that magnetic person, you can actually go ahead and fix it. So go ahead, hit subscribe because I bring you videos like this every single week, and let's dive in. Mistake number 1, talking more than you listen, especially about yourself. I know this sounds counterintuitive and I'm going to say this out loud, but people who always make the conversations about themselves do not come off as confident. In fact, they come off as needy, like they're constantly searching for proof that they matter or their point of view matters. And I get it, you might think that sharing your stories or your thoughts or your hot takes will make you sound more interesting. But when it always becomes about you, what you're really saying is, notice me, approve of me. And that is not a good color. You will always find that if you are in a group where somebody is like this, you don't want that person's company. And chances are, if people don't want your company, you might be making this mistake. So what do you do to fix this? You need to learn how to listen. You need to learn how to make silence and listening a part of your conversations. You need to give other people the stage and take genuine interest in what they're saying. So when you start to ask questions, instead of constantly just butting in, constantly making the conversation about yourself, when you let your presence and not your monologues do the talking, you basically elevate yourself almost instantly. This brings me to mistake number 2, overcompensating with name-dropping labels or achievements. You know, there are these people in the group who will always talk about, oh my god, I own the latest Lamborghini, or I own 10 Prada bags, or they'll go ahead and say that, you know, I had dinner with Shah Rukh Khan last night. And then you and I instantly know that they're faking it. They think they're doing this great thing, sharing their story and making themselves seem credible. But there's a fine line between sharing your story and trying to prove your worth. Constantly bringing up who you know, what you've achieved, or the brands that you're wearing might seem like a way to build credibility, but more often than not, it just comes across as insecurity in disguise. It signals that you're not quite sure if you alone are enough without your resume, without your connections, without the designer logo. And while that insecurity is understandable in today's hyper-competitive social media fueled world, it still ends up weakening your presence. Because true presence, true charisma does not beg to be validated. And if you think about it, when you're interacting with people, people rarely remember the brand on your shoes or your bag. They rarely remember your title on LinkedIn. They remember how grounded, open, and secure you felt in your own skin. And of course, how you made them feel. So if you're somebody who tends to do this, I want you to go ahead and focus on connection instead of performance. That's a mental shift that you need to make. Start by noticing when you feel this urge to prove yourself in a conversation. Then, instead of leading with your accolades, with your associations, you lead with curiosity. Offer insights into the discussion, ask questions about things you genuinely don't know, but hold off on mentioning that you know Shah Rukh Khan. Coming to mistake number 3, performing femininity or masculinity for approval. If you ever caught yourself acting extra sweet on a date just to seem more likable, or held back on your opinions in a group to avoid ruffling feathers, or tried to appear tough and emotionless so that you won't be called weak, then you have gone ahead and made this mistake, my friend. Most of us have done this. I have done it at multiple times. And on the surface, it feels harmless, like you're just playing the part, like you're fitting the vibe, you're adapting. But here is the thing. When you start performing a version of femininity or masculinity just to be accepted, whether that's being a trad wife on Instagram or an alpha male on YouTube, you do not come across as empowered. You come across as disconnected. If you go ahead and read the comments on any such reel that talks about these concepts, or where the person is trying to be this, you will understand how transparent you are when you try and do this. You do not come across as feminine or masculine, you actually come across as disconnected and insecure. But it's not just something that's harmful in the short term. If you continue to indulge in performative femininity or performative masculinity, over time you actually start forgetting what is real and what is just for performance. We saw this unfold in the show Adolescence, where the need to perform gendered expectations for validation spiraled into identity confusion, emotional detachment, deep insecurity, and eventually an external manifestation in the form of murder. That is the danger. When external approval becomes your compass, you lose the map back to yourself. So what do you do if you are stuck in this zone, or if you feel the need to perform certain masculine or feminine roles? You need to start catching yourself in those small moments of self-abandonment. When are you dimming, or when are you exaggerating, or when are you overcompensating just to be perceived in a certain way? And when you understand when this is happening, then you try to anchor yourself in authenticity. Speak up when you want to. Allow your emotions to show, soften without apologizing, and lead without pretending. The goal is not to be perfectly balanced, it is to be real. You might lose a few people in the short term this way, but you end up eventually building a tribe that likes you for you. This brings me to mistake number 4, using gossip as a bonding mechanism. Gossip often masquerades as connection, right? It can feel like a shortcut to closeness, something to laugh over, something to vent through, something to bond around. Because when you're bitching about somebody, for example, or when you're talking badly about somebody, you feel like you both are coming closer together. But what it actually reveals is reliance on negativity to create intimacy. And even worse, it basically subtly erodes trust. Because if you are speaking this way with someone, it raises the unspoken question, what might you be saying about them? Now, people may not call it out up front, but they notice. And once that seed of doubt is planted in somebody's head, they are not going to trust you. Your credibility takes a hit. So if you want to build trust that lasts, you need to stay away from the easy pull of drama, the easy pull of gossip. When you become known as the person who doesn't gossip, your words begin to carry a lot more weight. You become a lot more credible in the eyes of the people around you, in private conversations, in professional rooms, even in personal relationships. And that is the kind of presence that eventually leads an impact. So if you are in a group where gossip is, the center of bonding, and when a conversation starts to lean towards gossip, if you're stuck in this zone, one of the best things that you can do is pause and redirect. So when somebody starts to indulge in gossip, you start asking about someone's passions or goals or ideas and not their flaws. And if you are the one who needs to gossip, or if you need to vent, do it with someone who won't co-sign toxicity but will still hold space for your emotions. And most importantly, speak about others the way that you would want them to speak about you. High-value people do not need drama to bond. They connect through depth, insight, and emotional safety. Coming to mistake number 5, transactional kindness. There's a certain kind of niceness and kindness that seems very warm on the outside, but when you look a little bit deeper, it looks calculated, it feels calculated. It's the compliment that is given just to receive one back. It is the favor that is done only when somebody is watching. The smile that secretly keeps score. And the truth is, when kindness becomes a strategy to be liked or validated, it stops being genuine. Now, people might not always be able to name it. They might not be able to figure out that this is transactional kindness, so to speak, but they feel the difference. That energy is subtle and it's unforgettable. Because real kindness does not come with conditions or expectations. It is not a performance. It's a reflection of character. The moment you stop offering warmth as a transaction and start offering it as a choice without needing something in return, your presence becomes more magnetic, more charismatic, your relationships deepen, and your reputation becomes stronger. Coming to mistake number 6, chronically chasing discounts, freebies, or jugaad, but in relationships. We often think of jugaad or shortcuts as money-saving hacks, but in relationships, they show up in subtle ways and they cost a lot more in the long term. It is when you expect full access to somebody's time, energy, or care while you offer the bare minimum in return. It is calling only when you need something from somebody and then forgetting about them when you don't. It's texting only when you're bored. It is expecting patience, empathy, or presence without offering the same. In fact, a lot of discussion around relationships relationships on social media nowadays is centered around this very concept, right? It's about receiving everything without having to give anything in return, both for men and for women. And a lot of people I've seen think that it makes them low maintenance, right? Or it is absolutely all right because they are the main character. But you have to remember that relationships are not transactions. When you do this to the other person, it basically feels like emotional shortchanging. Because being smart in relationships is not about cutting corners. It's about showing up with consistency, with care, with intention, right? It's about having that balance, having somebody's back. People can feel when you're fully present, when you're fully there, when you're fully committed to something. So when you're just there enough to keep the door open, they understand that too. There's also a form of emotional gaslighting that a lot of people do in relationships, in toxic relationships. So keep an eye out for that. So now if you are somebody who is gotten used to doing this, expecting a lot without giving too much, maybe it's because, you were hurt in the past. You need to start rebuilding that part of yourself. So ask yourself, are you giving what you expect in return? Do you only reach out when you need something or also when you care? Replace convenience with commitment, even in small ways. Send the first message, show up without being asked, check in without reason. Relationships don't thrive on jugaad. They thrive and survive on reciprocity. Mistake number 7, bragging about being low maintenance or not like other girls or guys. I'm sure you have seen reels and videos and even dating profiles where people say things like, oh, I'm not like other girls. Arey, ladkiyan itna makeup kaise pehen leti hain yaar? Or I'm one of the boys. Or no drama, super low maintenance. Things like that. I don't need gifts. I'm chill like that. On the surface, you may think that this sounds cool, like confidence or detachment or self-assurance. But when you look closer, it is often rooted in quiet comparison and very, very loud insecurity. Because the moment you start to define yourself by how unlike others you are, you're already competing. And when that competition is fueled by the need to feel superior, it does not come across as evolved. It comes across as condescending. You think you are signaling self-worth, but what people often hear is, I'm insecure and I need you to know that I am better than the rest. Real individuality does not need to diminish anyone else to stand out. It doesn't need a tagline or a contrast. It just exists effortlessly. And when it's real, people feel it. Coming to mistake number 8, ignoring boundaries, both yours and of others. I know that I've spoken a lot about authenticity in this video, but sometimes in an attempt to be authentic, people also tend to go too far. They may overshare too quickly, ask deeply personal questions within minutes of meeting someone, push people to open up under the excuse of being real. These things don't make you authentic. Not at all. They make you overbearing and they quietly diminish the sense of trust that people have in you or the trust that you're trying to build. I once had a colleague when I was working a full-time job who was not very well versed with the concept of boundaries, who didn't understand it, I think, fundamentally. So he was having a conversation with 2 interns who had just been hired on that day. And the first question he goes and asks them is, if you were to die today, how would you like to die? By fire or by water? And it was one of the most bizarre conversations that I have ever witnessed. But that is an example of somebody who does not know how to uphold a boundary. Result, people stopped talking to him quite literally. Now, people often confuse openness with intimacy, but just because you are comfortable saying something does not mean that the other person is comfortable receiving it. Real connection does not happen when you bulldoze boundaries. It happens when you respect them. And it's not about other people's space, it's also about your own space. If you don't have internal boundaries, your emotions start leaking into every interaction. You overshare when you're hurt, you vent too soon, you look for closeness before safety is even established. Trust is not built by rushing closeness, it is built by honoring the space between 2 people. And when you treat that space with care, you stop coming across as emotionally messy and you start showing up as somebody who is emotionally mature. This brings me to mistake number 9, lack of emotional hygiene. You can dress well, you can speak well, you can carry yourself with grace. But if your emotions are constantly spilling out, unfiltered, people are not going to remember that polish. They will remember the chaos. Emotional hygiene is a part of your presence that nobody sees, but everybody feels. It's not about suppressing how you feel. It's about knowing where, when, and how to express it without making other people collateral damage in the process. Venting without boundaries, lashing out mid-conversation, trauma dumping on friends or strangers, even people online, posting cryptic stories, hoping somebody is going to check in. All of this might feel like self-expression, but to those on the receiving end, it often feels like emotional spillage, unprocessed emotions leaking out in real time. And while people may empathize once or twice, eventually it erodes the sense of stability and self-awareness that they associate with you. Let's be clear. Emotional hygiene is not about pretending you're fine 24/7. It's about learning to not hand your emotions off to anyone who is nearby. It's about building emotional resilience, because when you give yourself space to pause, to reflect, to process, you stop reacting impulsively and you start responding with intention. And this brings me to mistake number 10, passive-aggressive online behavior. Now, originally, this point was not even supposed to make the final list, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it needed to be here. Because we have all seen it, that vague story that is aimed at someone that some people need to learn quote, or that sudden streak of over-edited thirst traps when you're clearly not okay. In the moment, it might feel powerful, like you're reclaiming your space. But in reality, it sends a very different message, that you haven't gotten a handle over your emotions. If you've been there, you're not alone. This is a habit that many of us fall into, especially in the age of constant digital expression. But here is what I want you to remember. You do not need to perform your pain to prove that you're hurting. You don't need an audience to make it valid. It's okay if you want it, but you don't need it. Pause, process, and then post if it still feels worth sharing. Because when you speak from a place where you have already started healing instead of one where you're bleeding right now, people see the power that you have. People see you as this quiet, grounded, unforgettable, powerful individual. And when you're trying to build a presence, whether it's online or offline, this is something that matters a lot. Now, if you're still watching till here, chances are that you care about how you show up in the world, and that already puts you ahead of 90% of people in this world. These habits don't just make you look cheap, they slowly make you feel that way too. And the worst part is that most of these are invisible to us until someone calls them out. So let this video be that moment for you. No shame, no guilt, just awareness. You don't need to fix all 10 overnight. Start with the ones that you think bog you down the most. I am putting them again on screen. Here are the 10 habits that we talked about. You have to remember that when you stop chasing validation, aesthetics, or loudness and start leading with integrity, with your own authenticity and ease, everything about you becomes richer. Your presence becomes more magnetic. And if you want to improve your personality even further, I highly recommend that you go check out this video next, because I talk about how to get hotter using psychology. Don't forget to share this video with somebody who may need it. And I'm going to see you guys very, very soon in the next one. Bye.